you are as a person, nothing like background, what you do. So you're a realtor, right? So you sell homes, or you sell commercial real estate, or you lease. You can modify the speech as well to your audience. So you do all things real estate. And so you can narrow that down if you want to. You can keep it broad. And that's the beauty of it, right? You're going to sort of like assess the situation and then sort of go from there. You're going to tell them what sets you apart, what's different, and provide examples. Examples are fantastic. All of you as realtors encounter all these interesting situations with buyers and sellers, and like I'm sure that there are so many stories that you could tell, your audience, and find a good example of that talks to what you're trying to convey to the listener. So like we had 33 offers on this house I just put up in Bennington. Things like that, like short, quick stories that show what you do. You're going to tell them how you get it done. I know some realtors, this is a very competitive market, so there are fewer listings, and some realtors are, in order to entice sellers to sell their homes with them, they're saying, I do this, and this is different than what everyone else does. And so that's a great way to do it, right? So like we have drones, so I can come out and get drone photography, and they might think that's cool, or they might not care. You might come up with a bunch of different reasons why, but like one specific thing that they're gonna notice, and that's gonna maybe change, and they're gonna look at you differently than the rest of those realtors. So that's what sets you apart. And then when you get it done, that's an example, right? So we use drone photography. We just did this acreage and we took drone photography of it and explained that. That's an explanation of that and a continuation of your speech. And then you can have a call to action. Always, always, always have a call to action. People forget this all the time. They talk about what they're talking about and they forget to let the listener or the audience member know how to connect with them. So like there was a residential sales meeting, and there was a gentleman talking about on that. And at the end, he was like, here's my phone number. And he like, said his digits. It was brilliant because he took time. People wrote it down if they were interested. And that's a great way to do that. And there's other ways to do that too. With social media, that's a fantastic example. And we'll go through that. But this is the basic, I guess, outline of elevator speech. So in the opener, you're generally talking to someone you've never met before. And when I was young, I waited tables, and then I owned a store for a long time. So I had to talk to people that I had never met before all the time, and I had to get good at it. And so a couple things that I've used in the past are compliments. People love compliments. Like, I really like those shoes. You seem so confident. Anything. People love hearing positive things about themselves. If you open with that, that is a really good way to do that. It's not the only way, but it's a pretty good way. And then they're going to and something like inconsequential, like a shoe or something like that, is a great way to do it. Because you're complimenting them as a person, but it's not anything that's like over the top, right? It's sort of simple and easy. It's like an easy way in. Maybe they have some really funky shoes on, so they're proud of those shoes, and then you're reinforcing that when you say that to them. So I had a friend who did pharmaceutical sales for a long time, and he would talk about pitching to doctors, right? Like selling drugs to doctors, basically. And he said, I just make it all about them because they love to talk about themselves. So like in order for him to give his pitch, he would talk about them first, and then they were more willing to listen to him. So that's a great way. Ask them a question. People do this on social media. I see it a lot. Like, what are you doing to stay warm this winter? Or like, how are you exercising? And you can do that in person as well. It's a great way to do it. And it turns the focus on them and not on yourself. So that's just a way to open it up. And it's all about the audience. You have to sort of gauge that. A lot of this is, you have to perfect these things. They take time. And like I said, coming out of COVID, I do think that a lot of people are going to have some anxiety and stress, like, interacting in person with other people. Some of us don't. Like, I generally don't have a whole lot of anxiety interacting with other people, but even I'm kind of feeling it a little bit coming out of COVID. So I think that it's important to practice this and just get better. And if it's not your strong suit, it takes a little bit of time and practice, but it's a great way to just get it down, and you can use it on so many different formats when you do get it down. So many platforms are great for this because you're really refining what you do and you're learning how to convert. Okay. So the first question, the first part we talked about is who are you? And some of you have worked on social media with me, and this is a big part of that, right? Who are you? Like, what do you do? What's your story? So the first step is just, it's really simple. It's just your name and that you're a realtor with PJMRE Real Estate. And you can, if you want to specify further and say you do commercial real estate, you can. You can say all things real estate. It depends on, you know, what you're trying to accomplish specifically. But however you do it, I would keep it very short and simple. This and the call to action are the simplest parts of this whole thing. Just like, hi, my name's Steven and I'm a realtor with PJMRE Real Estate. That's it. You don't have to complicate it. And this is actually a good point where, like, I personally have a lot of I have, my experience like is varied. It's very wide. And so I could talk about being a lawyer or being this or being that, but like really none of that matters because what I'm trying to do is convert this person into a real estate customer. So that's the focus of this speech. And I'm really going to eliminate all that other stuff. And then what do you do? So this is more than I'm a realtor. And this is interesting because I think this starts to, if you're a newer agent or if you're an experienced agent, these things start to diverge a little bit here. So it's more than I'm a realtor. You're going to tell them, and I have a typo on here, sorry. Interesting and quick description of what you do with an example. So I just sold this house in Bennington for 30K over asking price in 12 hours. Things like that. And these statements are things that are going to gauge their interest. So it's something exciting that happened and something that they're going to be like, wow, and might relate to their current situation. Like, I have a house in Bennington and I really would love to cash in on that house right now. And that's your example just told me that it's possible and that you can do it. So this is that second part. You're going to give them an example. Like, oh, I just sold this house in Bennington for 30K over asking price. like, and you're not trying to brag, but you are trying to get their attention. And that's a fine line sometimes, I think. But, you know, I'll leave it to you, you know, and, you know, your own refinement of your elevator speech. But, you know, that's a great way to do it. Or here's another one for HOAs. You know, I helped Shady Acres, I just made that name up, reduce their HOA fees last year. You know, that's a great specific example of you actually doing something and something that happened in the real world and recently. So that's, if you are a newer agent, you're going to have less of these examples. So there's a couple things you can do there. You can talk about, at PJMRE Real Estate, this company is involved in so many wonderful things in the Omaha community, and you can talk about our company. So this, you could pivot from me to PJMRE Real Estate in your voice and talk about those things. Like, we just opened a new office in Elkhorn. Things like that, you know, anything that, like, if they're out west, there's that. You know, we are leasing the spaces in Mastercraft, and, you know, all of those things. Our charity of the year is Angels Among Us. So any of those things that the company does as a whole that can help you to get there, you can definitely say that in a way that isn't taking credit for it, but also relates you to it. And that's a great way to do that if you have less experience. And that's just one little subtle change that you could do if you have less experience. What sets you apart? So this is where you're going to get more specific, again, using real world examples. Can't emphasize enough how good it is to have real world examples. Think about them. Like, think about what the company does. Think about what you've done. I was talking with Reggie and Kathy yesterday. We took a photo at a commercial property they just sold, and they were telling me the story of this commercial property. And it was really fascinating because I think sometimes as a realtor, like, there are things that happen in your life, in your occupation, that you might find sort of mundane and like uninteresting, and like other people find that stuff fascinating. Like it's totally fascinating how they had a situation where they had to, the approval was contingent upon the condition of the premises, and there were several other factors, but it was really interesting to listen to them talk about it, you know, me not being a realtor. So I think that your audience, you know, will use those examples and find them probably more interesting than you do if you deal with that every day. But the important thing is you keep them quick. So it's a 30-second speech. So it's more like coming down to it's more refining your statements so that you convey what happened without like getting into too many details and lose their interest as they get bored. So, you know, here I have a couple examples like what sets me apart. And this is you can go two ways with this. You can get more specific about what you do, or you can use contrast. Like you could say, I don't know how many realtors there is on the MLS, like 3,000. There's 3,000 realtors on the MLS. Most of them just do X, but I do Y. And that could be a marketing techniques. And I don't know if I use farmersonly.com, which is like a farmer dating website. I just thought it was funny. But like basically something that you do that is different that none of those people are doing, right? So like they're just all sort of autopiloting it, and I'm like actively engaging in marketing, or it could be a number of things. It doesn't have to be marketing. I just work in marketing, so I think of marketing. But you know, solicit multiple bids. I have another one here for HOA management. Most HOA management companies, they have one person bid, and it's the same person that's been bidding all the jobs. We have 4 bids, and so we'll get you a more competitive price. Things like that, like specific examples that explain how you do what you do and what sets you apart. Okay. How you get it done. So this is another step from that, and it's like you're offering a vivid real life example of what you do. So then this would be a situational like type sentence, right? Like last week we listed this house in Bennington. It needed a lot of work, but after marketing we had offers rolling in. It was crazy. And like I would definitely say you want to be excited about what you do. I think that that's something that people overall, like if you're talking to someone about what you do and you're trying to convert them to a customer or a client, you're definitely going to want to be excited about what you do. And I mean, I know that it tends to get boring sometimes and like you're not always excited about everything, but like try to really find a statement that, you know, gets you pumped, that gets you stoked. Like this situation, and if you're excited and talking about it, like, wow, we had all these offers rolling in, it was crazy. Like you could say something like that and it would get the listener to be excited too. Like they're like, wow, that's really interesting that like, you know, 33 offers rolled in or however many offers rolled in. Another example with HOA management, I sort of used these two as a realtor and as HOA management. You know, Shady Acres needed their entryway landscaped. The previous company had one offer. We had like 4 offers or something like that. And they had one $10,000 offer and we had from 9 to 6, and they could pick whatever company they loved, you know, or whatever company they felt was right. So again, you're like taking that to another level, that example of what you do differently and showing them what you do differently with this statement. So, and like I said, we'll go through this, but you have these parts to it, and then if you write down each part, and then you basically write a sentence or two for each part, and then you refine that and put it together into a nice little succinct one. Call to action at the end, so important. So many people miss it. You know, what I've done in the past is I use my social media in my call to action when I'm in person marketing to people. So if I'm meeting with them and I'm telling them about something that I do, I'm like, oh yeah, I have a photo of it right here. Conveniently, it's on my Instagram where I can get them to pull up their phone, or maybe I don't pull my phone out. I have them pull their phone, they pull up their Instagram, and then they pull it up. So sometimes you can even get like that far into it where like they just follow you right there, and you've converted that random interaction into a follower on social media. It could work with Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever. And that's why it's good to keep those things up to date and current, because you can continually be putting people into your audience. Another factor with this is the way that it works algorithmically with Instagram and Facebook. The more people you have in your audience, those other people that are related to those people are then sort of like, you'll come up in their suggested feeds, right? So it's neat to see that, like how that algorithm can work for you out in the real world by converting them, and then their husband or their friend sees that they like you or follow you, that type of thing. And then you can just do old school, like, here's my business card. There's nothing wrong with that. Let's have coffee. I mean, anything. And you want to sort of gauge what they want. I think this is an important point too. I think too many times in, you know, sales and trying to market to someone, we try to force interaction on whatever platform we're comfortable with. And I understand that from a management of like, you know, the level of that. But like, if you connect with them on whatever they're comfortable with, it's going to be so much easier. And you're going to have more success because you're not trying to convert them to some different platform that they're not familiar with. Some people love emails. Some people love phone calls. I talk on the phone and like nobody talks on the phone anymore. But I would much rather have a phone conversation than an email. Like that's just me. That's how I am. Maybe I'm kind of old school in that, but or like message me on Instagram. I love that as well. So see what they like. Try to read that situation and how they want to connect because that's the way things are today. There are just like 10 different ways to connect with someone. I mean, with social media platforms, it's gotten just like next level with how many you have to manage. And that's like probably a separate conversation for a separate time, but how you manage all that. But you definitely want to get some sort of, um, you know, contact information them and a call to action. Because generally with a house sale, it's a larger transaction. So you're really trying to open up a conversation. You're not trying to just sell them something there right on the moment. So this is more like establishing contacts, building your lists, things like that. Okay. Okay, and then definitely with this, practice makes perfect. Like I said, we're not all of us are like really excited to go run around and talk to people about what we do in elevators. So you just got to take your time and do it. The number one way to do it is write it down. So for each of those sections we went over, you write it down and write a sentence or two for each. And then you're going to edit out and the filler and refine to shorter, persuasive statements. I think this is super important. I think all of us, sort of the way we talk is very informal. And when you get into these types of situations, it's amazing how much you can cut out. Like I've had paragraphs that I've edited down to like 2 sentences because so much of it was just filler and talking around what I was really trying to say. So what is the simplest, easiest way I can say this that the listener is going to enjoy to listen to or be entertained by? So you want to refine those statements. You want to check that it flows. So once you have that written down, you have those statements, those sentences that you've made, you kind of refine them. Now you're going to check that it flows, right? Like that it's not real, like, I don't know, that it's not like chunk, like it doesn't like, so that it flows together. So like it's this easy conversation that you have. Because really, truly, there's a big, like in marketing, so there's a lot of people define between a pitch and like a narrative storytelling, right? That's like sort of the narrative storytelling is the new marketing technique. Like we're not going to like pitch you, we're going to tell you a story that you're interested in. And so turn it into a little story. I kind of see them as the same things, just like 2 different ways to do it. But like basically you're going to tell them a little story. So if you turn that into a little story that's engaging and interesting, I think you're going to do very well. And the more you do it, the better you get at it. You'll sort of add stuff, take out stuff, and you might fail at it. People might look at you weird. I mean, maybe you try this and somebody's like, what are you even talking about? But as long as you're simple and short about it, no one's really going to like, you know, it's not a big deal. So you want to memorize keywords and sentences. I've done this. I had to do in the past. I had to do a lot of public speaking, and so I would just sort of memorize like 1 word from each sentence, and that was kind of my hook, my memory hook for like what flows next. After you do it so many times, you're gonna know it by heart. But because it's about you. So, and then another topic on that is make sure that the words and terminology you're using are natural to you. I think I've tried to tell stories with words that weren't mine by using like, I don't know, maybe a topic that I was fairly unfamiliar with or something. And then I use the words that are recommended, but it kind of trips me up. So I rewrite it in a way that is the way I would speak and using the words that I would use. The important question here, ask why the listener cares and if you've achieved your goal. So this whole exercise is really about getting that person in the elevator or in the lobby or at the networking event to connect with you and use you as their realtor or, you know, manage their property or whatever, all things real estate you want to do with them. So, you know, when you get this done and you get it together, just ask yourself and maybe ask someone else and, you know, give this speech to other people. I know a few actors and actresses, and they're constantly practicing these things at home. They just sit there and practice them, and that's how you get better at it. So it's a great way to just talk it out and do that, and ask if you've achieved your goal once you've done that. Like, do they care? Is it an interesting story? Maybe it is. And sometimes you don't think it is, and it is. So it's good to ask a variety of people. Don't just ask people who are going to give you an answer that you want to hear. I would maybe find somebody who is like, I guess, will tell you hard truths sometimes, because that's a really good way to get better. And you use it and you continue to improve it. So that's what I would say, like, you're going to try this a couple times. I think it's a great way. If you're fairly adept at this, it's an excellent way. And I see this as a place where you can succeed where others fail. I think that a lot of people aren't comfortable with this type of converting customers, right? I think a lot of people are like, no way I would get an elevator and just start talking about real estate with someone. There's definitely a huge number of realtors in this town that would never do that. And I think that if you're good at this and if you practice it, that you can really have an advantage on people, because you're going to look really like you have your stuff together if you can put together this little 30-second speech about what you do and why they should use you. I know, like with Shark Tank and stuff, there's a lot more of this in pop culture today, but it's a great way to sell yourself, and I think it's an advantage, especially now that people are relying so heavily on technology. It's that flip side of technology. Like, there's definitely opportunity because everyone's gone online, especially after COVID too. Do I have any questions so far? Anyone? Does anyone have an elevator speech? No one. Okay. Oh, wait.
Nobody have one, Clinton.
Say what?
How can nobody have an elevator speech? I don't believe that.
Right? I don't either. Thanks for the backup. Do you have one,
I got your
Ryan?
back. Of course I do. But why do I have to give mine first? I will, but I think someone else should.
I should have incentivized this.
I know. Everyone's just sitting there quiet, looking through the list of names of all these quiet people. All right. If I'm not in the mood and I don't like the person, here's what I say. I'm in real estate. Oh, really? How is it? Busy. Because I don't want to talk to them. I mean, that's kind of a bullcrap elevator speech. But it's easy to go to as well. So like if I get asked about what do I do, I say, I work at PJMRE Real Estate. I love it. I get to work in commercial, residential, we also do property management, and we're in all these crazy projects in the city. They could be downtown, out west. And the best part is I get to use creativity, which isn't something I knew I would get to do in real estate. And then there's like a million things that person can ask me about.
Love it. Anybody else? Okay, we'll move on. Ryan, thank you so much for participating.
That's what they pay me the big bucks for.
Right?
We'll give you some Morgan money.
I know. I should have incentivized this. But
I'm going to call someone out if you're not going to, Clinton.
Yeah, I'd feel more comfortable if you did than me, Ryan.
All right. Hold on. I got to look at the list of who's on here. Wow. Eeny, meeny, miny, moe. And then someone should speak up, but
This is Stephanie. I can
Yes.
chime in. So it's funny. I mean, I'm one of those people that I could talk to a brick wall and kind of be comfortable doing it. So putting together a formal like pitch for me isn't something that I really do. And it's funny that you bring pharma into it because that's actually what I do in my other life. But yeah, I think just complimenting people and talking about them is a huge thing. And then it's funny, we were actually just at Carpet Land today getting guy, and he's like, "Oh, how many rentals do you have?" And I kind of told him, and he's like, "Do you manage them all yourself?" And I'm like, "At this point, yes." We're kind of teetering on the brink of how long that's going to last. And he's like, "Oh." And I was like, "Well, I'm a realtor and I work with PJ Morgan, and if we turn him over to somebody, it'll be to them." And he's like, "Oh, so we just bought our first investment property and we're kind of kicking it around and we don't know, do we manage it ourselves? Do you guys have trouble?" I might call him. And he's like, "Oh, we work with PJ Morgan all the time. They're great. Like, we do stuff in their properties." And, Ryan and Susan took over. And I think, I don't know, I think it's amazing how much you actually can find in common with people when you. So that's my spiel.
I think you're exactly right. Like, and that's, compliments, but also common ground. Like, we all have so much in common. And I mean, like, so it is easy. It's situational and sometimes it's hard to read, but that's a great example. It's a big little town, right, Stephanie?
And he kind of started the conversation talking about his daughter, and she'd been looking for a house. And so of course my spidey sense picked up, and I kind of started talking to him about it. He's like, "Well, we just bought this duplex." And oddly enough, we had looked at the duplex, and so we got to going about the duplex. And Omaha is so small, it's kind of gross. But yeah, you've got something in common with everybody that you run into if you just try.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent insight.
I love what you just said. It's amazing about being small. It's super true.
It's a little incestuous sometimes, but hey, we could all leave if we really hated it.
Right. And actually, if you know how to work it, you can get way further ahead with it.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Which is, I think, the whole point of this is because it's awkward
Absolutely.
to do until you start doing it, unless like you, Stephanie, you're like good at it. But if you're not, it takes practice. Like, I mean, I'm not kidding. When Susan and I first started doing this, we made each other go sit down and have a drink, and we looked each other in the eyes and we're like, "Okay, talk to me like a stranger until we get comfortable."
Well, I mean, I think if we could all operate on a drink or two, it'd be a whole lot easier for everybody. But
true. I mean, you got to start somewhere.
right.
That's what happy hours are for.
Right.
Right. And two, I think it can be like, I don't know, I can get kind of into a spot in my head where it's like, well, I don't want to seem like I'm bragging. Like, I don't want to be like, "Oh God, I'm the owner of PJ Morgan Real Estate," and I sound like I'm boasting. But then I have to remind myself, well, crap, I started as an intern. I worked really hard to do this. So like, I should be proud of it. And I should say it in a way that comes across genuine and not in a braggadocious way, and then I won't have a problem. So that's why I have to practice it, which sounds stupid, but I do. Just to be transparent.
And does it evolve for you, Ryan?
Yep, it does. It gets more comfortable. It starts to feel like conversational versus like, "Oh, how should I piece this together?"
Well, and I think you're right. I think that kind of just practicing it does make it easier. I will say that one of the things I always I don't want to sound like is, you'll be sitting around having drinks with friends and acquaintances and someone mentions house hunting. And if you happen to be there with another realtor, all of a sudden, like, they don't get the sentence out of their mouth. And the other realtor's like, "I'm a realtor. I can help you. Do you have an agent?" And I think more than anything, I don't want to be that person because nobody wants to work with that person. You sound desperate. It's like dating. You're just a little too desperate. So I think also knowing what you don't want to come across like is helpful in kind of framing how you're going to talk to people. So I think that really finding that common ground before you throw in the, "Hey, I work for PJ Morgan. Like, if you ever have questions, just here's my card. Give me a call."
Yeah, the opener is important. I think, like you said, that is like, just like, I guess, establishing that comfort, so it's not a pitch. Like, you're talking to them more as like someone with something in common rather than just a random person. Like you establish some
Right.
sort of rapport with them.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. I think bios are next. Yep, bios are next. Anybody else want to talk about elevator speeches?
You know, sorry. No, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, I was just going to add. Actually, sorry, I wasn't meaning to ghost. I was just driving and I had my phone in my pocket, or otherwise I would have raised my hand just for the record. But what I was going to say though was kind of leaning into what Stephanie was saying. I'm just always looking for opportunities to inject. Not necessarily that I'm the one that's like initiating the conversation with like an elevator speech. I've never been one to do that, but I'm just always on the hunt looking for that opportunity to, not necessarily even just say to chime in and say, hey, I'm a real estate agent at PJ Morgan. It's more so like if we're at a dinner party and somebody says, and is talking about, how crazy the market or however somebody else brings it up, I'm usually just looking for an opportunity to like provide value and some kind of informational, educational little snippet. And then that usually implies them to say something like, well, how do you know that? And, they say, well, I'm a real estate agent at PJ Morgan. So it's more so just always having those little nuggets of information that you can always kind of drop in and spark people's curiosity to ask you what you do.
Yeah, no, I think that's great, Jason. And I think it differs for everyone, right? So everyone will probably have their own go-to. But yes, I mean, you're looking for opportunities to interact. Really, an elevator speech is a formatted way to interact with others, by talking with them. So I totally agree. And I think you're right about it's interpersonal, and you have to remember that. Like it's not a one-way convo, right? Like you're trying to talk with them, not at them, I guess. Does that make sense? What do you think about that, Jason?
Yeah, I'm never talking at somebody because people's eyes are going to glaze over really fast and be bored because you're trying to like you said, Clinton, like you're like pushing your world onto somebody else. I'm always trying to find opportunities to meet people where they're at.
Yes. Yep. And so it's trying to interact with them, but yeah, it's important to remember like it's a two-way convo. And I think you said like you were looking to add value to whatever conversation was going on, maybe not necessarily like approaching them directly.
Right, exactly.
So yeah, I think there's different ways, but it's mostly just getting to talk to people about what you do. And I guess the most important thing that one of the most important things is that it is all things real estate. So at PJ Morgan, like you're gonna be able to have conversations that other realtors just aren't going to be able to have. I mean, they just don't have the access to the breadth of like services that we offer. And so that's a really dynamic thing. And I think people will find that very interesting because you're more than just a real estate agent. You're all things real estate. So I think, our core values, so many things that we're engaged in are going to open up so many conversations. And I think that you can do it with the service oriented and keep it you could do it any number of ways really. But, this is a good way to just, I guess, get your story together and understand who you are so that when you're presenting it to people, you have an understanding of that.
Hey, Clinton, can you hear me?
Yep.
Perfect. To add to that, I think mine being located in like Midtown, spending a lot of time here and chatting with people, I usually go off of like the new developments and stuff like that's happening in town because there's a lot of activity going on and growing, and this younger generation is all about the trendiest things. So
Yes.
the trendiest place to go, what's cool, what's new, and if you're following just headlines and the social media that you put out and stuff like that, it's easy to stay up to date on that and say, oh yeah, the Crossroads development's happening, the area around there will improve, it'd be smart to buy in that area, or Little Italy is hot. I know there's a entire corridor being built. Oh, how do you know that? I'm with PJ Morgan and we're working in that area. Stuff like that. I've just found relating it to areas of town that are growing and developing has been a super easy segue into a small elevator pitch or relating to PJ Morgan. So Just thought I'd add that.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, that I literally got shivers a little bit, Johnny. That's a good one relating it to current events. That's excellent. Especially in Midtown with younger buyers and sellers too. Although, everyone really, but like that's well done. Like that's a fantastic strategy. Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else have any other like different approaches to it?
I think it's always been my common ground when I go in. I try to do something that is relatable. So I always try to relate with my clients, and that way it doesn't seem like I'm pitching. I'm really just a lot of times they've got a problem basically that I'm trying to help them solve. So if you have management things that you need assistance with, here's how I can help. Do you need to sell your home? Here's how I can help. So I always try to find that middle common ground where I can relate to them, and then I dive in through that way.
Well, and Kara, can I ask you a follow-up question?
Sure.
Okay, so you said that you were recently more active in your own community. Have you had to use these techniques at all in that regard? Like I think with HOA, or I don't know, what you want me to disclose, but you had said that you were engaging more with your immediate community in regards to some of these things, in regards to doing all things real estate. So have you used that at all, like with people that you haven't met before?
Yeah, I think it's becoming more broad of everything that we do as a company and everything I can help them with as a real estate agent. I think that, like, especially with my immediate community, they, maybe just saw me as a real estate agent and didn't really realize how much of the property management side I am. So now managing the HOA and kind of diving in that way, I've been able to talk about, well, we don't just do property management. We don't just do sales. Now I've been able to kind of give them a broader picture of everything that we're able to do, and expand my services and how I can help them.
Yeah, that's awesome. And like you said, like they're going into that, maybe an interaction, maybe they don't know you, but they know of you and they have a perception of you. And so with that, you're sort of like, I mean, I am that, but I'm also all these other things, real estate. Is that right?
Right. Uh-huh.
That's great. That's
And
awesome.
I think it's remembering too, like as you're doing stuff, to make sure that you're giving that mixture of a little bit of everything. So they don't just know you as the real estate agent. They don't just know you as the property manager, that you're kind of giving a mixture of everything.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. So good. You guys are also good at this. Does anybody do anything crazy? Does anybody have like a crazy elevator speech or something like entertaining? I wish I had a good entertaining example, but I don't. Thanks you guys so much for participating. That really helps. It's like, I really appreciate it. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Okay, so that's it. So basically, and there's different strategies. You've heard people, engage, use a lot of techniques, but like these are just some general points. If you don't do this, so if this isn't a thing that you've done before, or you're new to real estate, this is a good general outline how to get started, and then you can refine it, and it can completely change. You could start with one thing and then end up with another, and that's good, because that means that you are using it and that you're adapting it. So I think, any of those things, but you really do have a special gift with doing all things real estate. And I would seriously wave that flag, because I think it fascinates people. I think even other realtors would be fascinated by it in some regards. So I think it's a great way to talk to people about that. And it's a unique thing that I don't think anyone else can claim in this city or even state, maybe. So it's a wonderful thing. And I would say use it and integrate it into your elevator speech. Okay, we'll talk about bios now. Writing a biography. Now this is different than an elevator speech. And so this is interesting. So the topic was writing a biography, which would be like a website biography, but there's like a bunch of different biographies, right? Like, so if you have social media, you have like an Instagram bio, and it's small and it's at the top of your thing, but it's important. because if you use that as like an anchor for people to connect with you, you're going to want to present the correct information there and the relevant information. So writing a biography, as you all probably can guess, you have to include your name, you know, what you do. And these are just like the basic pieces that, and how you put them together is really up to you, and I guess the creative element of it. I love to write. It's like a thing that I really love. And it's because it's like science. It's like words like, I don't know about science, it's like art, but that sounds too cliche. But it's fun to write and write descriptions, even on houses and of myself and of other people. So like, I love to do that. But the basic elements here are you have to have like your name, which is a thing actually. I know that like if some people have had a name change, like that can change on your biography too. So maybe think that I have had discussions with people who have had name changes, and they were like, I don't know whether to use my former name or my, you know, my current name. And it was kind of an interesting combo, especially if you've been in real estate for a while, because that's, you know, will people recognize you with the other name? And that's entirely situational, but that's kind of an interesting one. Nicknames too, like if everybody knows you as Doc, but your name's Steve, you know, which one do you use? Sometimes things like that are considerations. Your current role, what it is that you do, and I just keep it, you know, pretty straightforward. Your personal brand. Now this gets into your story, like we just talked about with the elevator speech. Like you all have a story, and they're all fascinating. They really are, and it's just a version. It's a way. It's learning how to tell your unique story. We, you know, so many of us have overcome obstacles in our lives. You know, we've had successes. You're where you are today because of your story. And so I think it's important to convey that, even in a biography, which is a more formal writing, but without telling too much. And this is where you're really going to cut it down. And just like in your elevator pitch, you know, or elevator speech, you're going to really really take it down, like, so that it's important and that it's unique and interesting, but like doesn't get bogged down in that. Because what you're always thinking about with all of this stuff is your audience. What do they want? What do they want to know? How do they want this information presented to them? And that's like the most important thing, because some of us would like to tell a really long story, but like nobody wants to listen to a really long story. So do I tell my long story and have everyone tune out, or do I find out a way that I can tell my long story quickly in a way that they can digest and that I can convert them as customers or whatever? And that's when you're writing your biography, that's you as a realtor. So that's like Joe Internet, or, you know, whoever is looking at you, and they're going to read about you on this like web page or on an Instagram page. What do you want that random person who doesn't know anything about you to think about you? Do you want them to see you as a realtor? Or like, let's say you were an archaeologist in a former life, right? But you've changed to a realtor. This is career changes. This becomes a bigger deal with biography. And I know that there, you know, I've had career changes, and we all sort of have. And well, maybe not all of us, but a lot of us. And so it's like a lot of fascinating things about you can be about archaeology, but really you don't want them to see you as an archaeologist. You want them to see you as a realtor. And so that's the important thing why I bring that up here. Like, you want them to view you as a competent realtor who is going to sell their house, manage their property, sell their commercial building, manage their commercial building, you know, what have you, in a professional way. And that's really, I think this is like, I guess on the who am I pyramid, this is kind of at the top, right? This is the more formal. But I do think you can add elements to it that make it personal without distracting the reader and them still seeing you as a realtor and not as the archaeologist. You're going to include your goals and aspirations, your relevant achievements. That's a great one. You know, like, what have you done recently? And this gets tough for new realtors. I mean, it's a thing, you know, if you haven't been in real estate, you're not going to have like volume numbers or like all these other things, but you can. And what I try to do is pivot. So you try to like take something that you did that you can pivot to real estate. So maybe as an archaeologist, like, you don't want to talk about your archaeological exploits, but you do want to talk about the relationship of archaeology to the land, right? Like, that totally works, right? Like, you're an archaeologist, you're working with the land, and you could probably, like, if you thought about that for a little while, pull out some really great real estate related points that how archaeology dealt with real estate, with, you know, real property. And that's a great way to do it. You know, there so many things are interconnected, and you just have to find those threads of what you did, or, you know, in the past that were achievements, and how you can turn them into something that's relevant to you being a realtor, because that's what you want them to see you as. If you have a bunch of relevant achievements, then this isn't an issue because you just list the relevant achievements. But like, that can be a little more difficult for some. An interesting statement. So this is about you, yourself. Like, you know, I think it's good. This is like, you're showing a little bit of personality in this. Like, and I still like to keep this real estate related in some ways. I mean, if you're really like, you could go like something unrelated, like, I play Dungeons and Dragons, or I don't know, whatever random thing that you do. You know, we all do like stuff, but like, you could come up with like an interesting statement, like about charity work or community, anything that's like sort of bigger and that you're interested in, that other people are going to be interested in. And then if it relates to real estate, even better. Because it's this is kind of a professional thing, especially like on like a website or a formal type of document. And like I said, I say this over and over, I can't say this enough. It's about audience. It's always about the audience. It's not, there's how we want to be perceived ourselves, and then there's how our audience will perceive us and use us for our services. So and sometimes they're different things. And I think it's important just to keep that in mind. Like, okay, somebody who doesn't know me, they read this, what are they going to see? Like, take yourself out of the equation and look at it that way. That's a great way, like, to look at a lot of writing, and even with your elevator speeches prior to this, like, what are they going to think? Because they don't know me from Adam, and you don't know how sophisticated the client is. I mean, it could be like a real savvy investor, or it could be someone who just bought their first rental home. I mean, you know, or someone who doesn't have anything to do with real estate, but they're selling their mother's home. I mean, like, or their father's home. Like, so you don't know all these things. So you want to come across sort of in this even-handed way, I think, with some personality, but also that they see you as an expert in your field and that you are competent and know what you're doing. Okay. Different biographies for different platforms, like I talked before. Website's going to be more formal. That's like sort of back of a book type biography. Ours are narrative formatted. I think narrative format's a great way to do it. It's not a resume, it is a biography. So I think a story is an excellent way to tell it. Just keep it professional and short and interesting. Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram all have biographies. So with these, Mick Mulhall, he does a good job. And I was checking biographies, and on his biography, he went to Creighton Prep. And so it says Creighton Prep on his biography, and then he says, "My bad, guys." Like, it's pretty funny. Like, he's sort of poking fun at himself, and like, it was pretty hilarious. I laughed when I read it. But I thought that was a good one. So things like that. There's lots of different ways you can do that and show that. Obviously, an Instagram or something like that is going to be a little more fun than, say, a website biography, but kind of play with those. Look at what other people are doing. I think that's important. Like, look around. What are other realtors doing? You know, Susan and Ryan, you know, people in other brokerages, people out of state. You know, there's a lot of stuff happening on the coast that hasn't even happened here yet. I see that in so many things. And, you know, look at what other people are doing. What kind of contact deals, a lot of details are people including on those social media bios, you know, things like that, like a clickable link that they can click. And that's another thing with anything online, clickable links are like the best. If they can just click on a link and are redirected to some more specific like content about you, fantastic. Like, they're not going to copy and paste the address and put it in the web browser. Anything that's clickable is great. There's lots of other platforms too. Some that we're not, you know, I want, like TikTok and Twitter, you know, look at those, look at examples, what prominent, and I wouldn't say look at the most prominent examples. I think that, because they might be playing by different rules than you're playing by. So I would maybe look at, like, you know, realtors with followers in the thousands or tens of thousands, you know, what are those people doing? and like sort of on that level, on a local level, maybe not the national, because it's going to be a different, they're going to have different calls to action. They're sort of, they might be doing some things slightly differently than you. So, you know, look at what people that you view are successful, look around. That's a great way. You can never look at too many other people to see what they're doing. And then find something that's uniquely you, you know. Again, super important. Some people use emojis, some people don't, you know, it's up to you, things like that when it comes to social media biographies. I know with articles, if you ever have an article written, they'll sometimes ask you about you or something that you're involved in. They'll ask you for a background. That's going to be a very brief little thing. And I think that that's good to have that website biography, like maybe a more professional one that you can just like send to people or whatever. It's a great thing to have. You're going to include it on your marketing materials a lot of times. As realtors, you're selling yourself, right? Your services. And so if you have a really good, concise little biography, that's a great way to do it. If you need help with that, I'm happy to help with that. I mean, there's other people too, but I'm happy to take a look at something and, you know, give you any input I can. So feel free to reach out to me or marketing at, you know, pjmorgan.com. And like I said, who and what. So who are you and what do you do? You know, that's an important thing. That's really what you're getting across in a biography. It's a great way to do it. Think about it that way. You know, who am I and what do I do? And that's really the important thing with biographies. Is there any questions about biographies at all in general or on social media or anything like that? Okay, well, if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to marketing at pjmorgan.com. I really appreciate everyone's time. I'm glad this was an interesting one for me to present. So I think it went really well. I hope you do too. If you have any questions about any of this, happy to speak with you. I hope you guys are having a great day, and that's it. I think that's the end here. Thank you so much. Oh wait, no, I do have more. Wait, oops. Two more things. So do's and don'ts for biographies. Don't include abbreviations, colloquial language, or jargon. I think people use abbreviations a lot and it like confuses people. I think that's like something good thing to avoid. Like, you know, ACCY or whatever, like don't include that. Like that you can if it's a very specific biography, but I think the more general language you use, the better off you are. Don't make it too long, keep it short and simple. People lose interest pretty quickly, as we discussed before. I wouldn't exaggerate things to a level where that might like when you're describing your accomplishments and achievements and any other part of your resume, make sure you keep it real. Like, I think if it's overly exaggerated, people might take you less seriously, even though you're trying to get them to take you more seriously. I would say pivot experience, like I said, and then audience. Always make sure that you are thinking about who is reading this biography and what you want them to do or how you want it to go because of that. Okay, more of this. So keep it concise, relevant information. Include how you deliver exceptional service and care. So what do you do that's different? We touched about this in elevator speeches. Highlight your achievements, even if they are somewhat related, unrelated, if you can relate them back to this, like the archaeologist example. Tell your clients a bit more about yourself, something interesting. Adding personality is a great thing. Some people crush it with personality. It just depends on how you're going. Maybe have somebody proofread that if you're in question, if you're wondering about that. Include what drives you as a realtor. So like why did you probably are passionate about real estate. Like you wouldn't go through all the trouble to become a realtor if you weren't passionate about it. So say why you're passionate about it. That's a great thing to include. Sound professional and approachable. Again, not a ton of acronyms, but a fairly professional bio. And then spelling and grammar, check it. It's like so important. Like have someone proofread it. Really, everything I do, I have someone proofread. There's no reason not to ever have someone proofread things. It's a great way to do it. They'll catch things you won't, and you want it to look tip top. So that is the official end of this. I want to thank you guys so much for coming. I hope this was helpful. I hope everyone's having a great day. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Clinton.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, bud. Good job. Thanks, bud.